It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public hearing. My name is John Urino, and I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. I conduct rezoning hearings on behalf of the mayor and council and make findings of fact, which I put into a written report along with my recommendation, which I then send along to mayor and council for their consideration and for their final decision. Now, that's for rezoning cases. We have one rezoning case on the docket tonight and also a special exception, zoning examiner special exception land use case. As to that case, I make the decision, which can then be appealed. My reports will be based on the information submitted to me, which include the rezoning application, the staff report, all written approvals and protests, all correspondence, and the testimony given at tonight's public hearing. I will say also that I go out to the property involved in every rezoning and special exception case. So I have been to both the TEP area there on Cottonwood Lane, as well as the property on Mission Road that's the subject of the rezoning case. I will include in the record all documents submitted to me up to the close of the public hearing. The testimony tonight is being recorded and a transcript will be prepared if requested. With that in mind, if you want to testify, and I invite anyone who is present and wishes to testify to do so, I will ask you to speak clearly and begin your testimony by stating your name and your address. It just helps for the record to have your name and address at the beginning, and then have testimony after that. So the process goes like this. We have the hearing tonight. If I close the public hearing, then in 5 business days, I'll prepare a preliminary report on the zoning rezoning case, or in the special exception case, I prepare a zoning examiner decision. In the rezoning case, 5 days after that, I prepare a final report. That final report is sent along to the mayor and council for their consideration at the hearing where they take up the case. So we'll proceed like this. At the beginning of each case, I'll ask someone from Planning and Development Services Department to prepare a brief statement of the case. I will then ask the applicant to speak. I will then ask anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on the case to speak, and I've had a couple of requests by email, so I'll call on those folks first, but everyone who's present here who wants to testify tonight will be given the opportunity to testify. After that, I will ask the applicant to respond to anything the applicant wishes to respond to, and then, if appropriate, I will close the public hearing. So we'll take up the first case. The first case is case C9-2206, Hinojosa, South Mission Road. Mr. Beal, are you presenting the staff report, or Mr. Struve, are you?
Mr. Reno.
Go ahead, Mr. Struve, go right ahead.
Thank you very much. This item is a rezoning request for Owen residents to C2 commercial to allow the construction of a commercial office building at 2225 South Mission Road. The proposed use includes an owner-occupied construction service use, parking area, and outdoor storage area. The site is a 0.7-acre parcel southeast of the intersection of Mission Road and San Antonio Drive, which is approximately 1/4 mile south of Silver Lake Road on the east side of Mission Road. This site is currently undeveloped and being used as an outdoor storage yard. The site is adjacent to an existing C2 parcel, which currently houses an elder services nonprofit. The property is within the existing neighborhood's building block in Plan Tucson, which supports neighborhood community commercial use along arterial streets. Land use policy direction is also provided by the Santa Cruz Area Plan, which encourages higher densities along Mission Road with specific locations decided on a case-by-case basis. Residents in the area have expressed concern about the proposal due to the wide range of land uses permitted in the C2 zone. A neighborhood meeting was held by the applicant on April 7th to discuss the proposed development. Based on the residents' concerns, an additional outreach meeting was held on the site on August 4th. As a result of the meetings, the applicant agreed to remove a proposed wrought iron fabrication use from the proposal. The applicant also agreed to additional restrictive conditions, including but not limited to restrictions to the hours of operation, building height, enclosure of the outdoor yard, and an agreement to plat and pave an easement to access the properties to the east of the parcel. The proposal also includes The proposal also will meet the City of Tucson Pima County Outdoor Lighting Code requirements. The proposal is in compliance with both Plan Tucson and the Santa Cruz Area Plan, and a plan amendment is not required. Subject to compliance with the preliminary conditions, approval of the requested rezoning is appropriate. No protests were received for this site. This includes the following four protests that were received today by U.S. Mail. Protest from Barbara Sub, located at 2828 South Cottonwood Lane. Protest Delana Coda, 3445 South Mission Road. Protest Lupe Moreno, 2611 South Mission Road. Protest Janine Sanders, 3171 South Mission Road. Planning and Development Services Department recommends approval of the requested rezoning, subject to the preliminary conditions. Thank you.
Mr. Struve, you broke up when you said how many protests you've received. How many protests have been received by PDSD?
A total of 9 protests were received by PTSD, including the 4 protests that were read into the record.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Oland, are you going to present on behalf of the applicant?
Good evening, sir. Yes, I would like to share my screen if possible.
Yeah, go right ahead.
It actually says it's disabled by the host.
I'm not the host. Is anybody there the host?
Well, I'll take care of it. One sec.
Sure.
Thanks.
And while we're waiting, if others could mute their devices while Mr. Oland is speaking, then he'll mute his device when I call on other people. It kind of helps with the feedback sometimes. If anybody who's not speaking would mute their devices.
Just
Thank
give
you.
me a second here. One sec.
Go ahead, Mr. Beal.
Still working. So it's a little bit different than Teams, so I see if I have to go back into settings. One sec. Okay, Paul, you should be able to do it now.
Thank you. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, and just start with your name and address, please.
Good evening. I'm Paul Oland with Paradigm Land. Address is 7090 North Oracle, Tucson, Arizona. I'm representing Miguel Hinojosa of Gray Colt Construction, who is the property owner. Now, Gray Colt is a local building contractor specializing in renovation and remodeling, and they plan to relocate to this proposed building and also provide spaces for several of their subcontractors, such as a plumber, an installation specialist, and another small GC. So here's the site plan that's proposed. Gray Colt is proposing a single building, parking area, and an enclosed yard behind the building. And I'll get into more detail as we go on. Vehicular access will be via an existing driveway there, an apron on Mission Road, which also provides access to our easterly neighbor via a dirt driveway that does not currently exist within an easement. We've provided customer and employee parking per city code, and the dumpster enclosure has been located at the far end of the property relative to the closest adjacent neighbors. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but it's in the northwest corner there. Landscape buffer yards will be provided around the north, west, and east sides of the property. No buffer yard is proposed along the southern edge where we actually butt up against the existing C2 parcel, or where installing landscape would impede access for the neighbor to the east, of course, or Pima County, which also accesses their parcel to the east via the same driveway alignment there on site. The rear yard will be completely enclosed by a 6-foot block wall, and landscaping will be installed beyond it all around the property perimeter there. There is from a drainage standpoint, a little tributary wash off-site to the east. You can see it kind of coursing through there in a southwest to northeast direction. Again, that's entirely off-site. There will be no impact to that drainage or any other off-site drainage patterns. I know that was a concern that was expressed. Utilities are all available nearby, and Mission Road has capacity to take on the very minimal amount of traffic that this building will create. So this really is truly an infill project. The building itself will have 5 tenant spaces, which is 1 for Gray Colt plus 4 others, and will feature front and back office spaces, including reception areas, client conference areas, admin areas, restrooms, and supply areas, which are all inside, of course. Here's a map of the property's vicinity. You can see we're surrounded on 2 sides by county open space there to the north and to the east, with another business to the south, and Mission Road, of course, is to our west. Across Mission Road is more county-owned open space that was actually platted for development as a single-family neighborhood before the county acquired it. Along the eastern end of the southern edge there, where there's a little 2-sided arrow shown on the plan. We have some adjacency to one existing residential parcel that gains its access through the property, as I mentioned a minute ago. And the nearest home is a little over 200 feet away, which is shown on here with an arrow. I apologize, it's kind of thin, but there to the southeast. Here's another view of the property's vicinity, and that's just to give some more context. This is an oblique aerial, kind of looking at it from an angle, but looking to the east. So Mission Road here appears along the bottom of the image, and the site is visible there. It's labeled site, and you can see the existing graded yard, which is also fenced. And there is the existing commercial building to the south, labeled C2. And of course, you can see the county open space is labeled as Pima County to the north and to the east and to the west, of course, across Mission Road. The existing access route that I mentioned through the property is shown in yellow, that yellow arrow there. So you can see how it provides access to the R1 parcel behind us. And behind that, you can see several other R1 parcels in the project vicinity, which I believe in this photo include 5 homes, a number of outbuildings, sheds and trailers and vehicles and other miscellaneous elements. This is preliminary architecture here. It's a rendering from the architect, and the building will be no more than 16 feet in the front, as Mr. Struve mentioned, and approximately 14 feet in the back toward the enclosed yard. So it'll slope down to the north. It'll be stucco, rock veneer, and with metal accents, shade awnings over the doors, of course, and all the light fixtures there will be provide safety level lighting, and they'll be fully shielded as well to mitigate any potential glare. In the back there, you can see kind of a dark spot on the wall. That's the vehicle gate to the rear yard, and that will provide secure storage for vehicles overnight. Our neighbor to the east will continue to access their property through this site, but the access drive will be paved from Mission Road rather than dirt over to where they'll enter the property over here on the very far right side of the slide here. So we approached the site cognizant of our surroundings, of course, and the need to be sensitive to the adjacent neighbors and the residents beyond them. So to that end, the first thing that Gray Colt committed to was providing a formal recorded access easement to our eastern neighbor to memorialize their access route through the property. Also, we felt that limiting business hours would alleviate some anxiety from our neighbors about the types of uses that are being proposed. So Gray Colt committed to business hours not going past 7 in the evening. And also they committed to not being open on Sundays. Additionally, Gray Colt is proposing to wall the rear yard, as I mentioned, rather than fence it, in order to provide complete screening of that yard, even though that area is barely, if at all, visible from the nearest home. And lastly, maybe a minor point, but the architect located the proposed roll-up doors along the north edge of the building, facing away from the residential parcels to the east. So those doors will be accessible only via that enclosed rear yard. So as Mr. Struve mentioned, we held 2 neighborhood meetings. One was online and one was at the property. And there's clearly a history of tension between the neighbors and former owners of the commercial property south of us. And those difficulties understandably manifest as a bit of skepticism and anxiety about any proposal such as this one. So that said, we heard concerns about a wrought iron craftsman who was intending to locate here. So we eliminated that from the plan, along with any other fabrication activity, because those types of activities can produce noise even at small scale. So we thought that was appropriate. We heard concerns about outdoor storage. So Gray Colt has committed not to store materials outdoors. We also heard concerns about traffic and potential land uses within the C2 zone. So we went back and forth with city staff a little bit to determine if the proposed uses, which really are more officey in nature, could perhaps be permitted in the C1 zone. Staff determined that we need C2 for the proposed use classification, regardless of the proposed development intent or restrictions. So we continue down the road of trying to identify design and land use commitments that could be made to provide more assurance to the neighbors that the proposed building will be compatible with the area. So a few weeks ago, we asked the neighbors if there were other restrictions they'd like to see. Earlier this week, we received an answer to that question in a roundabout kind of way via letters sent to city staff. So several additional restrictions were requested in those letters by the neighbors, including the last few on this slide. So we already talked about the first 3 that we agreed to. In those more recent letters, there was also the restriction on no adult activities, bars, or alcohol service, marijuana dispensary, a hotel, or a health clinic. We're fine agreeing to that. No 2-story buildings, we're fine agreeing to that. And also just that the building height and size and the various other site elements will follow the PDP as shown on there. There was one request in those letters that we were really unable to commit to, and that's one wherein all trees along the northern and eastern perimeter are to be preserved. So first, I believe most or all of those trees are actually within Pima County's parcels, so this development wouldn't impact them anyway. Secondly, some of those trees are clearly stressed and not very healthy, but in the off chance that some of them are actually on site, Gray Colt would certainly prefer to plant fresh, healthy native trees and plants from local nurseries. So in summary, this zoning, although it is to C2, is proposed with a number of land use, operational, and design restrictions proposed by Gray Colt or requested by nearby residents to ensure that it is compatible with the area as an appropriate transitional infill use along a major road. Appreciate your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Oland. I don't have any questions right now. We had a request from Beryl Baker to speak. We'll start with Ms. Baker. If you're present, would you like to speak? Please go ahead and start with your name and address.
Am I on off mute?
You're there. Stop the screen share there, Mr. Oland. Thank you. Go right ahead, Ms. Baker.
Okay, this is just about 20 minutes too long, but I'm gonna try to do it anyway. Beryl Baker, environmentalist activist whose address is 2723 South Mission. As one of numbers of us who have lived in this neighborhood for many years, we are deeply concerned about the ramifications of what could happen if this piece of property is rezoned to commercial use. As one of the founding members of this neighborhood, who also helped write the bylaws, which we presume you have read for the Santa Cruz Southwest neighborhood, I hope so. We have faithfully and diligently attempted to uphold the vision we created in 1987 for our neighborhood. As one of the first and last European agricultural areas in Tucson, we have attempted to maintain and preserve the rural open space atmosphere of our neighborhood. Through hard work, luck, and a shared vision with others in the community, we have been able to help establish dedicated in perpetuity open space for future generations through the county. The county's properties, which directly borders this property, have been dedicated to maintain as open space, and where they have done projects to enhance the open space for wildlife habitat. On the west side, across the street from this location, the county bought property and attempts to maintain some of the wildlife corridor in this area between the West Branch Conservation Area and Tucson Mountain Park. We understand the county at this time was not interested in this particular property. We suspect it's because the property has been graded bare, so there's only tree habitat north and east of this property. One major concern is if they develop this property, how will it affect those remaining habitats to the north and east, and how the clean water coming off the property, irrespective of a detention or retention basin, will impact the San Juan Wash and ultimately the West Branch of the Santa Cruz River. The other major concern is the domino effect that rezoning one property encourages rezoning of other properties. There was a period of time when we were convinced by community leaders that building apartments was a way to stop urban sprawl by infill, but it doesn't. It only creates trash that blows from the higher density of people. In the same way, the applicant can claim this would be beneficial to our neighborhood, but overall, rezoning this property could set up for rezoning other properties in our neighborhood. This would have a detrimental effect on all the work that our neighborhood has done to maintain the rural open space that has therapeutic value as a scenic route to the people who drive on Mission, even if they don't realize it. We respect the thoughts and opinions of the people who will be directly impacted by any development of this property. We always hope that someone buying into this neighborhood recognizes the unique qualities this neighborhood exhibits through their living style and the open nature that provides respite for those who wish to walk its habitats. It is our personal hope that you will deny rezoning this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. I just had one question for you, if you would.
Yes, ma'am, sir.
What is the geographic extent of your neighborhood?
It ranges, Mission Road, wait a minute,
Yep.
Silver Lake, Santa Cruz River, then at 44th Street over to the Freedom Drive to Ajo, up, I forget the name of the little jog at there on the West Branch to the city limits, then west to the city limits, and then back down Ajo, and then down Mission.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it was kind of convoluted, but that's kind of,
No, I have a picture in my mind and that works just fine. Appreciate your
Yeah,
input and
we-
testimony.
we were trying to protect the West Branch, so we tried to include whatever was applicable to that and the Santa Cruz River.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? You can signify by just unmuting and saying you'd like to be heard.
Yes, I'd like to be heard. This is Jody Birch.
Ms. Birch, go right ahead with your name and address.
Thank you. Jody Birch, 2229 South Mission Road. Let me give you a picture since I think it's kind of not very nice if I don't. Hang on one moment, if I may.
Sure, take your time.
Okay. I'm not able to get this going here.
I take no offense. If you'd like to go right ahead, that'd be fine.
I wanted to show you a map.
Oh, I
as
see. There's
but-
a thing you can push that says screen sharing, although I have reviewed all the maps and I have a pretty good recall and I have some of them right here. So if you want.
Okay, I won't waste time by trying to go live here. Apologies to all of you. Again, Jody Birch, 2229 South Mission Road. My family lived on the original 10 acres, and we are the closest house on the map that Paul shared, the 200 some odd feet or guess that he shared. And that house used to be part of the 10 acres my family lived on. And briefly to speak to what we've already submitted to you, examiner, and also Beryl has spoken a little bit about it. The building that seems to be considered precedent, 2227 South Mission Road, the other C2 building, started as a B1 office that was about a third the size it is now, and was the office for my parents in a home-based business that was on the larger 10 acres in 1960s. So that building has increased in zoning and has been the source of some issues where we have tried to ensure we are protected under C2 from activities that were exceeding C2 in the past. And Paul is correct when he says that it's really skepticism, not anxiety, but we need to look at what happens in the future. And that's what I think a lot of the parties that are presenting their comments are concerned about what's next steps after this zoning. So the applicant agreed to conditions if the zoning is granted as C2. And I want to express my personal appreciation for that hard work that Paul is doing on behalf of his clients and how much he's readily listened to the people. I was initially concerned, for example, about the zoning for my neighbors at 2225, that they wouldn't have an easement. And this seems to be, fairly well addressed. And although with the uncertainty of the project, I had formally objected to the zoning change from R1 to C2. But in doing so, I'm acknowledging that if it does go to C2, it's better to have a soft landing and have restrictions than to have no restrictions. So that is basically my personal position. It is not really an infill lot. It's an infill lot for residential, which is why it was R1. And the owner perhaps didn't have due diligence or know that this couldn't just automatically be changed to C2. So it probably makes a bit of a problem, but we are definitely boxed in by C2 once this goes. We're the people behind it, and for the same comments that Beryl made, the scenic byway, which is Mission Road, and many other things. On my map I sent with my information, I did show that the Pima County areas were on 3 sides, including across Mission Road, as was noted. But the platting that was done on that, and shows from aerial or from views on the maps, that platting was prior to when this neighborhood had a hard-won attempt and was able to have Pima County acquire that big piece of property. So there is likewise, the property to the north is right on the banks of the West Branch of the Santa Cruz, and it's very fragile soil, if anyone's ever walked on that particular piece of land. So it's really not, it's not infill intended for commercial, from what I understand of the city and other interest views, where the trending right now is residential. But for the reasons that have been put forth, you know, if the protections can be put into place, that would be fine. But the preference is to not have commercial change to C2. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Birch. Would anyone else present like to be heard on this case? I hear no one. Mr. Oland, would you like to respond to anything that's been said so far or add anything to your presentation?
No, sir, I don't really have anything to add. It's been, I think, a nice conversation we've had ongoing. And as I mentioned, we've tried really hard to address the specific concerns and then you know, impose operational and design restrictions that I think would take a whole bunch of potential uses off the table functionally. You know, especially that 7 p.m. closing time. There's a number of uses listed in C2 that you just wouldn't get somebody in those use categories agreeing to close at 7. So that kind of, you know, I think it mitigates it pretty effectively. So, but again, we want to make this work, and I really appreciate the dialogue we've had with the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Oland. I'm going to close the public hearing on case C92206. Thank you, everyone, for their participation. Good night, Mr. Oland. The next case is case SE2235, special exception case TEP Cottonwood Lane. Mr. Beal, are you presenting the staff report?
Yes, I am. Okay. So this is a request by Tucson Electric Power Company, TEP, for approval of an electric substation as a special exception land use in the R1 and R2 zones. The project site is approximately 10.5 acres in size and is located approximately 3,500 feet east of Mission Road and 2,000 feet north of Ajo Way, near the west bank of the Santa Cruz River. The preliminary development plan, PDP, indicates that the center portion of the site, making up approximately 1/2 of the parcel, is to be occupied by the 138 kilovolt substation equipment, which will close with a decorative masonry security wall 12 feet in height, with surrounding landscaping and water harvesting areas. The site is currently comprised of vacant land, which was previously used as an aggregate mine and materials sorting facility. A distribution system of this type in the R1 and R2 zones is subject to the Unified Development Code regulations and process and requires approval through a zoning examiner's special exception procedure. A public hearing before the zoning examiner is required, and the zoning examiner renders a decision to grant the use with or without conditions or to deny the use. Currently, TEP serves customers in this area. Tucson Electric Power is requesting approval of this substation. And the design compatibility report states that the new substation will strengthen electric reliability for customers, meet future energy needs, and expand power capacity in the area to help drive economic development in the surrounding area. The area west of Interstate 19 from Star Pass Boulevard to Irvington Road has seen a substantial load growth as a result of the new commercial and residential development. It should be noted that a floodplain ordinance variance was approved to reduce the default erosion hazard setback EHS from 490 feet to 230 feet. The application for ES reduction was processed in accordance with the City of Tucson floodplain regulations and the variance procedure per TC 26-12. Supporting documents submitted for the variance request included a detailed study of the affected reach of the Santa Cruz River, and the report was reviewed by both PDSD and PM, as well as the Pima County Flood Control District. Once the report was considered complete, the variance request was referred to the Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee as required. Staff reviewed the variance request and forwarded a recommendation for approval to Mayor and Council, which is the convened as a City of Tucson Floodplain Board. Should be noted that the review of the special exception case by Pima County Natural Resources Park and Recreation and City of Tucson Parks and Recreation indicates the proposed trail, the Cottonwood Lane Trail, along the west edge of the project site and along the east side of Cottonwood Lane. Pima County Natural Resources Parks and Recreation Department recommends that in addition to the proposed path to Paseo de las Iglesias Loop Trail connection shown in the design compatibility report, an easement for the Cottonwood Trail be granted along the west side of the parcel adjacent to Cottonwood Lane, and this easement should be wide enough to accommodate an 8-foot wide path. The proposed special exception is consistent with Plan Tucson and Santa Cruz Area Plan in compliance with the applicable criteria of UDC 4.9.11a. The applicant states that the project will serve to stabilize neighborhoods throughout the planned area by strengthening electric reliability for customers, meet future energy needs, and drive economic development in the surrounding area. The site has been significantly disturbed in the past due to its previous use as an aggregate mine and material sorting operation. Subject to compliance, we attach with the attached revised preliminary conditions. Approval of the special exception land use in R1 and R2 zones is appropriate. As of today's date, there's been one protest, and there have been Planning Development Services has received some neighborhood association letters from the Tucson Mountain Association, which was a protest, a letter from the Santa Cruz Southwest Neighborhood Association, which was a protest, and a letter from the West Side Neighborhood Association, which was also a protest. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Mr. Pugh, would you like to be heard on behalf of the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Urino. My name is Chris Ortiz-Pino, and I'll be representing Tucson Electric Power.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
On this case. It's okay. I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick.
It should be, I just put you as to do that, so it should take a sec.
Thank you. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so this is a presentation for the Cottonwood 138 kilovolt substation zoning examiner hearing. My name is Chris Ortiz-Pino, and I'm representing Tucson Electric Power as an environmental and land use planner. Our address is 3950 East Irvington Road. Also on the line is Amanda Wittenborn, engineering project manager, Brian Pugh, who is an environmental land use planning supervisor, Donovan Sandoval, who is a distribution planning and engineering manager, Kevin Latandra and John Oliver, who represent SOMAS as our engineering consultants. Quick agenda here. We're going to discuss the phase one of the project, which was the mobile substation, give a brief background on that, then go into the proposed Cottonwood substation, the proposed need, benefits, and the project permitting process to date. I'll then discuss site selection process, the location, zoning, and land use of our selected parcel. I will then discuss the preliminary development plan and our request of a condition of the special exception process. I'll go through our visual simulations and then respond to any questions that you may have. So in 2019, TEP installed a mobile substation as a stopgap measure to continue providing reliable service to the area. This parcel is located just north of Ajo Way. It is owned by the city of Tucson and managed by the Pima County Regional Flood Control District. The mobile substation is a permitted temporary use until the Cottonwood substation can be put into service, at which point the mobile substation and related infrastructure will be removed and the parcel landscape to match the character of the adjacent Paseo de las Iglesias River Park. TEP proposes building a new 138 kilovolt substation on a 10.7 acre site. The substation will connect to an existing transmission line that is adjacent to the property. And the substation will then convert the energy from transmission level voltages to distribution levels for the safe delivery of electric service to area customers. The purpose of the substation is to strengthen electric reliability for customers, meet future energy needs, and expand power capacity to support economic development in the surrounding area. As Mr. Beal mentioned earlier, the area west of I-19 from Star Pass Boulevard to Irvington Road has seen substantial load growth and is a result of new commercial and residential development. The area is currently served by 5 distribution circuits from 3 separate substations. An analysis of these circuits has determined that each of them are significantly loaded by the existing demand. And in order to provide contingency support to these circuits, allowing for greater flexibility in response to outages, construction of a new substation is necessary. As mentioned in the previous slide, the benefits of the new substation to the system include increased reliability for customers, the ability to meet future energy needs that are being driven by economic development. The new substation will reduce the amount of time it takes to restore service after a power outage. Additionally, the new substation will support TEP's continual efforts to improve reliability by retiring aging 46 kilovolt substations. In terms of land use, the new substation will be built on an existing brownfield site that was previously used for aggregate mining and inert material screening. The substation and landscape design is aligned with the aesthetic of the adjacent Paseo de las Iglesias River Park and offers a great improvement to the existing character of the site. The proposed development plan includes new multi-use path connection and is in support of the Pima Regional Trails System Master Plan. I'd like to now give a brief background on the project permitting process to date. In November 2020, we had a pre-application meeting with PDSD to discuss the project and requirements for development. That led to us developing a floodplain ordinance variance, which was submitted in October 2021. And this was to request relief from the erosion hazard setback on the property. Our engineering consultants produced the study of the affected region of Santa Cruz River. This was reviewed by PDSD, Department of Transportation Mobility, Flood Control District, and then was referred to the Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee. The Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee is composed of career professionals with technical background to advise on matters relating to stormwater management and floodplain and erosion hazard management. They reviewed the variance request and forwarded a recommendation of approval to the Mayor and Council to reduce the erosion hazard setback from 490 feet to 230 feet. At a public hearing on March 22nd, 2022, the Mayor and Council concurred with the expert opinion of the committee and voted unanimously to approve the variance. On June 22nd of this year, TEP resumed the settlement process and held a neighborhood meeting at the Lynn Urquidez Elementary School. This neighborhood meeting was attended by 6 members of the public, 4 of whom lived in the adjacent Desert Pueblo Mobile Home Park. There were also 2 representatives from nearby neighborhood associations also present. We then held a design review board hearing on September 16th, where the board requested additional information and changes to the perimeter wall design. TEP returned to a second hearing on October 7th with changes to the wall design and earning their approval and a positive recommendation to the zoning examiner. And here we are today. In terms of site selection, the process begins with a load study. We don't just go in and pick any site willy-nilly. We take into consideration technical system requirements and projected electrical growth of the area. As a result of that study, TEP distribution planners are able to calculate a load center, which is a geographical point where, where we need to have a substation, or we need to locate a substation in proximity to. This information is then sent to land planners. My team, along with Brian Pugh, our team then conducts a detailed study to identify and evaluate potentially suitable sites near the load center. The map that you see here describes the 9 sites that were evaluated in that site selection process. Each site was screened for technical and logistical constraints to determine their suitability for a new substation site. The criteria we use to locate a new substation include proximity to the load center and the ability to meet technical system requirements. The site must be the most cost-effective location with respect to the associated cost of development, improvements necessary to distribute the power from that location. It is preferred that the site be on vacant land, that the site can accommodate a minimum footprint accounting for jurisdictional setback requirements, that the site avoid or minimize impacts to sensitive natural or cultural resources, be compatible with surrounding land uses, particularly existing adjacent residential land uses. And of course, the site also needs to be available for purchase from a willing seller. So as you can see here we have outlined the location of our subject parcel. You can see that we have the temporary mobile substation just north of Ajo Way along Cottonwood Lane. The zoning around the property is primarily R1 with a corner of R2. We are surrounded by R2, R1, and a mobile home 1 zone. We are requesting approval for the special exception land use for these zones. The surrounding land uses of the proposed Cottonwood substation is primarily residential, and apart from the retired City of Tucson Cottonwood landfill, to the west and southwest of the property are the Desert Pueblo Mobile Home Park and the Mesa Ridge Manufactured Home Community. To the north and northwest are 2 homes separated by the old landfill. It's worth pointing out that the primary access to the property to the north of the proposed substation is from the north. They access their property off of Silver Lake Road. The landfill is of course vacant, which leaves 1 residence that regularly uses Cottonwood Lane for access to their property, and that is this parcel here. So we'll go ahead and describe the preliminary development plan to here. There will be 2 substation access roads. The primary access will be on the west side of the substation and will have a mechanical security gate opened by a card reader. The second access road will lead to a manual gate and be used for in case of emergency or for the installation of a temporary temporary mobile transformer. The substation itself will be enclosed by a 12-foot decorative wall consisting of split-faced cinder masonry blocks. The applicable use specific standard for distribution systems specifies that the height of the perimeter wall must be 10 feet where contiguous to residential zone. In accordance with federal critical infrastructure protection standards, TP must ensure that the protection of its electrical infrastructure and has developed its own critical infrastructure standards specifically related to the prevention of physical breaches of substation facilities. And we have developed our own standards, which include a minimum 12-foot high masonry security wall around its substations. The zoning examiner has the discretion to modify standards for screening with a condition on the special exception land use permit. TP is requesting a perimeter wall height of 12 feet to meet that critical infrastructure standard. The development plan is in compliance with city perimeter and landscape buffer yard requirements. However, the effective setbacks from the perimeter wall of the substation to the property lines and landscape buffers are more than what is required. To the north, the wall is 72 feet from the property line. The west setback varies between 125 feet on the northern portion around here and 35 feet on the southern portion of the wall. The south wall is set back in excess of 400 feet from the property line, and the east is effectively set back considerably as well, 190 feet to the north and 65 feet on the southern portion here. You can see there's a 20-foot security access road around the outside of the perimeter wall. and a riprap line drainage channel, which will receive flows from the Desert Pueblo Mobile Home Park and convey water around the substation to the north and into the Santa Cruz River at the northeast corner parcel here. We are proposing a new 8-foot wide multi-use path, which will be constructed along Cottonwood Lane, around here. And this will connect the Paseo de las Iglesias River Park with a planned future multi-use path along the west branch of the Santa Cruz Wash. Landscape plans include new drought-tolerant trees and shrubs along Cottonwood Lane and within landscape buffer yards. Water harvesting basins are proposed in areas to the south and east of the substation walls. Lighting will be installed at the substation for emergency and maintenance situations that may occur at night. There will be no dusk to dawn lighting within the project site. This is an example of the wall that was approved by the design review board. And it shows vertical articulations that were added based on their recommendations. Here we go into the visual simulations of the project. You can see the top image is looking from the north, or from the south to the north. You can see the Catalina Mountains in the background, Tumamoc and a mountain as well. You can see that the existing fence line is pretty dilapidated. There's piles of inert materials there. The below picture is what we are proposing with drought-tolerant trees and shrubs, multi-use path, and a well-groomed improvement based on existing. This is a picture from the north looking south. This is the northwest corner of the site. And again, you can see very distressed trees, not open, but a chain link fence that allows visibility into the site. I also want to make attention to the fence along the mobile home park here. You can see that there is a slatted fence with, you can see it better on this image perhaps, but there is a razor wire along the top edge of that, and mobile homes are faced away from the their backyard, so they are not facing the site. And so looking onto the subject parcel here, we can see that the wall is much more apparent, that the trees, when mature, will provide sufficient screening. And the only facilities that you'll see above the tree line are static masts and our drop-in structures. Went too far. Sorry about that. Another visual simulation. This is from the Paseo de las Iglesias River Park path. This path is just just north of the connection from the proposed addition. So this is where we would connect into the river park. Looking north, you can see Tumamoc in the background. And the simulation here, you can see you'll be able to see the wall, the static masts and H-frames that will receive the wire from the drop-in poles. You can't see it behind this image here, but there will be two structures that will be visible as well. This visual simulation is from the east bank of the Santa Cruz River, looking west along the horizon. And so you can see essentially the horizon line is still visible above the walls. We are proposing to remove this lattice tower here, and we'll be adding two monopole structures that one would receive the line, drop in, and then come back out. So it'd be the addition of one pole. The next visual simulation is from the River Park path as well, but much closer to the substation at the base of these drop-in structures. I wanted to bring your attention to the existing rock embankment here that will be improved to be grouted riprap, grouted cement riprap, and bank protection. And that concludes my presentation on the substation. I want to bring your attention as well to the project website at tep.com/cottonwood-substation as well for the public who would like more information. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question about the flooding issues that have been raised by Mr. Dolan. Are you familiar with those issues in general?
I am familiar in general. We do have our engineer on the line who could speak to them more clearly, as well as the city engineer as well.
Okay, well, let me just frame the one question I have now, and then we can, anyone else who wants to speak to the issue can do so, and then we'll continue with others. So when the Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee had a letter March 10, 2022, there were 3 conditions that they imposed at the end of that letter. Have all those conditions been complied with? If you need me to, I can read them out.
I believe so. I will request that Kevin respond to that directly.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead and start with your name and address. Full name and address, I should say. If Kevin's there, please go right ahead.
Hello,
Yep.
my name is Kevin Latendry. I'm with Somas. Our business address is 333 East Wetmore Road. I'm the project manager on this project for TEP. I also have on the line is John Oliver, who's also with that firm, who's the lead hydrologist who handled the erosion hazard setback. So I would like to defer to him on these questions. John?
Okay, Mr. Oliver, I guess it's you, not Kevin. So go ahead and start with your name.
Yeah, John Oliver, work at Somas, and I was the principal hydrologist on Somas's staff in support of the erosion hazard setback analysis. And I do remember the conditions. I would ask that you refresh my memory on them.
Sure,
I know
no
one
problem.
of them
Here,
was
the first, it says this: STAC, which is, I take it, the Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee, recommends acceptance of the EHS variance request with the following recommended conditions and comments. 1, an official O&M plan will be provided by the applicant per item 4 above, and I can read that to you if you need that, but do you know if the OM plan was provided?
I do not know that particularly. I think Brian Puke probably answered that better.
Okay, let's go to the next one, see if you know this one. Number 2, TEP City and Pima County floodplain control, I think, shall monitor and inspect existing soil cement along this reach of the Santa Cruz River, as well as the TEP site and associated bank improvements, as the site is considered a critical facility. Will that be done? Has that been done? I guess it's going in the future. Will monitor. So is that already in place to happen?
Yes, TEP already has standard maintenance plans and regular checkups of all their facilities. Particularly, you know, they have to go in after any substantial rainfall event and check all of the stuff in the wash. And there is that existing large pool that will be turning into 2 pools that they'll be, you know, frequently looking at the bank in that area. On top of, you know, any kind of local on-site stuff that may occur as part of the separate operation and maintenance plan.
Okay, then the third one is really the one I should have focused on. It appears, this is what it says, it appears that results from the additional EHS bank erosion analysis support the initial analysis that the bank migration distance is less than the required setback of 230 feet. However, STAC recommends that the city request further explanation of the analysis and associated results for the bank stability and toe erosion model, BSTEM, prior to acceptance of the results and procedure methodology. Direct comparison of the results with the original EHS determination will be beneficial. Has that been done?
That was done. So J.E. Fuller was our sub-consultant on that. And so they used that BSTEM model, which is essentially a spreadsheet and an alternative, in theory, more conservative methodology to look at erosion. And it came back with significantly less erosion than the approach that they had taken. And so that, you know, that has been provided to the city and updated in the the overall variance submittal package and provide it to the city.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Oliver. You've been very helpful and I appreciate it. Does the applicant wish to say anything else at this point in time?
I just wanted to state that the O&M plan will be completed and in place as will be completed with the development.
Okay, and just as a cleanup matter, I think you're correct, Mr. Ortiz Pino, that the fence that's there now is dilapidated, and I would say more than somewhat dilapidated in parts. I assume that TEP plans to secure the site before any construction.
Yes, the site will be secured and cleaned up before construction.
Okay, thank you very much. We've had a speaker request from two folks. One is Beryl Baker and one is Steve Dolan. So I'm going to ask first, Ms. Baker, would you like to be heard on this case?
Yes, sir.
I need your name and address again. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. Beryl Baker, 2723 South Mission.
Great, go right ahead.
Okay, I'm just kind of stressed out on this, so I'm trying to take a deep breath.
Oh, just take your time. I talk too
All right.
fast. It doesn't mean you have to.
Just briefly, I would like to again say that we would like to see the TEP use the site just north of Ajo in what is already a commercial area. Then the guy mentioned about distressed trees. Distressed trees can be saved by the very water that it would take to put in new trees. Why do people always talk about the taking out established trees instead of saving them? Duh, drought. But established trees take less to keep alive than raising new ones to the size of the old trees. What they are proposing is not compatible with the plans for there on this stretch of the Santa Cruz River, nor of the Santa Cruz Southwest neighborhood, both of which border it. Please take into consideration all materials that have been presented to you by the opposition, as well as the TEP material that shows this is not compatible in this area. We need to take a long view of what we want our city to be like in the future. And this particular project is negating the long time made and long-term plans for this area of Tucson. Please ask TEP to find another site for their plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Mr. Dolan, are you present?
Yes,
Please start with your name and address, and then I want to say something, and then I'll let you talk.
sure. First of all, I wanted to share some map. I don't know if that's possible, but I'll start talking.
No, I need your name and address, then I wanted to say something, then I'll let you talk.
Okay. I'm Steve Dolan, living at 4154 North Tortolita Road. I'm a 48-year Tucson resident. I represent Tucson Mountains Association and floodplain professionals who protect communities.
All right. So what I wanted to tell you was that I understood that you wanted to make certain that I had in hand the actual physical materials that you delivered to Planning and Development Services Department and not merely electronic versions of them. And I appreciate that, especially when it comes to the aerials. It's fine to read a letter online, which I do all the time, or a document online, which I do all the time. But I want to thank you for bringing down the actual hard copy aerials. They're a lot easier to see what's significant about them. But I wanted to make certain that you understood that PDSD did exactly what you asked, and I went down and picked them up. Now I'll stop talking and I'll listen to you. How's that?
That's great. You answered my second question.
Okay.
It was about the maps, and of course 11 by 17 maps are a lot easier to read than the digital copies. So I'll talk a little bit about the maps. Some of the historical maps that I provided show me a meandering Santa Cruz River with flooding and erosion to the site. The topographical maps, which are the 11 by 17, show the curved river and angled floodplain to the site. Tucson Mountain Association is concerned this dangerous location with unprotected banks will be damaged, causing future power outages. As you mentioned, the proposed substation is a critical facility that should have 500-year flood protection. I am certified floodplain manager number 106, one of the first CFMs in the country. For over 20 years, I have taught floodplain classes to professionals in 4 different states. FEMA staff and other professionals have seen these maps and question, why is a critical facility proposed next to the Santa Cruz River that is curved and angled to flow toward the site and erode the banks? The proposed substation does not meet 6 sections of the city floodplain, stormwater, and erosion hazard management ordinance, nor meet the Unified Development Code section for a utility distribution system. And the DRB did question those in the first DRB meeting. They would not answer those questions in the second DRB meeting. And I'll add that most of the DRB meetings and zoning examiner meetings are to upgrade existing small facilities. They're not for new large TEP substations as this 10-acre parcel would be. The flooding and erosion history, emergency electric reliability, critical facility and critical infrastructure requirements, and the non-compliance with city regulations are facts for the zoning examiner to recommend the special exception be denied at this dangerous location and for TEP to select a different site. I won't go into the over 300 pages I've read. The zoning examiner, you were provided 17 pages from the Planning Development Services Department, and those are incomplete about the dangers and the process. This is a floodplain, not a PDSD issue. TEP showed the site selection map, and I was going to show that, no need to now. In spring 2019, TEP conducted a study to identify potential sites, and all of the other sites are safer from flooding and erosion than this Cottonwood site. In July of 2021, the city floodplain administrator provided 11 comments about the site to SOMAS. Two of the 11 comments were about the river curve section and alternative sites. In January 2022, SOMAS tried to address the 11 comments in a letter and submitted a variance application on the same date. It was not submitted October 10th, 2021 as TEP presented tonight. The floodplain administrator was surprised because the TEP or the SOMAS engineer letter was never approved for the Cottonwood site, and the 60-day clock started for the variance review when the applicant was submitted that day. The variance requested a reduction in the erosion hazard setback for a straight section. The entire Cottonwood site is within the 1,230-foot erosion hazard setback for a curved section. The variance report stated the Santa Cruz River could revert to the original meander at some future date, and a combination of low and high frequency storms over a period of several years could result in the Santa Cruz River attempting to reclaim the prior to 1953 flow path. Though that's the meander that's shown on the 3647, the decades of maps that I provided to you, Mr. Urino. And I will say the variance was not processed in accordance with the floodplain variance. And I'll explain a little bit. During the March 22nd, 2022 Mayor and Council public hearing, there was one person. The Mayor and Council, the only question to the floodplain administrator was about public notification. Floodplain staff answered staff was rushed for the 60-day review. There were no floodplain, there was no erosion hazard setback, there were no alternative site questions. And during those 60 days, the Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee reviewed the variance, and you brought up some of the technical issues. They had 7 technical issues in total, and you mentioned 3 or actually 4 of those today. The floodplain administrator 11 comments and stacked technical issues were never forwarded to or addressed by the mayor and council before they granted a variance. Again, like I said, the variance was not processed properly. I will add, nationwide floodplain variances are very rare. They put a use in harm's way. There has not been a city floodplain variance in 18 years. The Cottonwood site is in harm's way. I'll try to share. Okay, I was going to share my FEMA map, but Mr. Urino, you have the FEMA floodplain map. And I will point out, there's FEMA mapped 500-year floodplain on the south part of the site. The FEMA mapped 100-year floodplain and floodway are next to the site's unprotected bank. The floodway velocity is 13 feet per second. TEP has not shown adequate bank protection for the Cottonwood site. TEP has not provided critical facility 500-year flood protection for the site. And there is purposely no soil cement bank protection at the site. The county didn't put that there because it's a natural area. The river and the floodplain naturally widen to become Paseo de las Iglesias Ecosystem Restoration Natural Area. If I could show you the floodplain map, I would also show you that the West Branch has no soil cement, has no river park, has no trail, and there is no physical connection from Cottonwood Road to the West Branch. There is no reason for a proposed multi-use trail connecting the two because there's no connection now. It's not possible.
May I interrupt for a second? What's
Sure.
what's the significance of that?
The significance is that TEP has added this multi-use trail from their original applications, and this multi-use trail has no purpose. It's not a, it
No, but
doesn't.
I don't mean to interrupt. I'm going to anyway. I'm sorry. Does it,
Sure.
but does that impact your concerns about the flooding in any way? That's what I'm asking.
No, I think it impacts the negative impacts to the trailer park. And there's many
Okay.
other negative impacts that have
Okay.
not been addressed.
Thank
Such
you.
as the number of poles, the radiation, et cetera. I will mention that the PDSD 17-page report refers to an existing facility that's to be upgraded. And I did visit the 36th and Keno site that was mentioned at the DRB site. That's a 5-acre site that has 12 poles. So the poles have not been addressed and the negative impacts of those 50 to 100-foot poles and the negative impacts to the views of the trailer park people, not just the people along the fence in Cottonwood. So I will conclude, it's common sense to not put electricity next to water. To prevent the emergency power outages, the emergency response, or the disaster liability questions, please deny a dangerous exception at this location, which is a special location for the residents and the wildlife and the residents of the trailer park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? I see a hand up and that works. Abriza.
Hi, thank you. My name is Abriza Zagir. I live at 2425 South Forest Avenue, and I am chair of the West Side Neighborhood Association. I was one of the folks that attended the open house meeting, and the questions that I rose about sound. So they said that between the hours of like after 7 or something in the evening, the dBs would not be over 60 or 62 dBs. I've asked continually over and over again, and it was not mentioned in any of the new information given out either by PDSD or TEP about what the sound level is going to be during the day. If it's okay, more concerned about folks, that live right next to this. If it's going to increase over 72, is it going to go up to 80 BD? What is the sound level? TEP has yet to answer that one question. And I also have concerns about, it's like the road to nowhere, the bridge to nowhere, the path to nowhere. It's like, well, we can get somebody to approve this if we promise them a bike path or a pedestrian path that, basically you walk back and forth on. And anyway, I did send in my written comments, and I'm not going to rehash any more about that. Anyway, thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you for your participation. It's very much appreciated. I see a hand up from Jessica Canez. I pronounce it poorly with a name like Urino. I should do better. Would you like to go ahead?
It's okay. Yes, hello, my name is Jessica Cañez. Alongside of me is my husband Arturo Cañez. I am here today. We live on 3000 South Cottonwood Lane, and that is just west of the Cottonwood landfill. So I believe we are about 300 feet away from this project. I never received any letters informing us of anything going to be built there. The only reason I understand that this meeting was happening is because someone actually did post metal signs along the fence there. And this is the first time of me actually hearing about our family hearing about this. Just some background about our family. So our family has been at this 3000 South Cottonwood Lane for over 3 decades. I'm very concerned about this new substation going on. I have multiple questions that I would like to ask. I understand that there's no, I'm sure you can't answer right away, but I would hopefully appreciate maybe an email. I can leave my email address so I can receive hopefully some answers about this. But I don't know if Mr. Ortiz could answer these questions or not regarding the TEP. But one of my first questions is, what are the long-term risks living near a substation as well as our livestock? Because we do have livestock there at our home. Another question would be, what is the safe distance to consider a safe distance from this EMF, which is electromagnetic fields, being so close to this substation where I have young children? And I would like to know if there's any health risk as far as illnesses or cancer related to this, to have this substation so close to our home. I also would like to know if, I understand now that there was other substations that were considered. That's great. I would appreciate maybe them looking into those substations. And then I'm very concerned about the buzzing, as well as the woman earlier suggested, what is the noise going to be with this electric power station going up? Those are my general questions about that. If someone could please review those questions and get back to me. But this is the first time of us learning of this Tucson EEP substation going to be built here.
And if I can ask, I've been down Cottonwood Lane. So is
Yes, sir.
your home the one that's accessed? If you get to the end of the road, then there's a left you could take. And is that your access there?
Yes.
Yeah, they're all the way down at that very, very end with the very last home there, residence there. We have a 10-acre property there too. So that's where I believe I met you when, I don't know if you came out there and were handing out some letters, but I remember the letters that were, no.
I just drove by today, and I don't.
Oh, okay.
The nature
yeah,
of what
yeah.
I do is I'm not allowed to talk to people outside of the hearing. It's just the way it goes.
Okay.
So that was not me handing out
Okay.
letters. But so how far is your property from this property? How far? are you from-
We're just on the west side of that old landfill that used to be there. I'm guessing maybe an eighth of a mile, maybe 500 mile or feet. We're
Right.
just right on the street. And there are obviously other residents that live in the mobile home community that are literally right across the
Sure.
street from this protect,
Right.
from this proposal. So yeah, those are some, like I said, some of the questions that we had, because like I said, we just learned about this because of the signs that were just put up there at the entrances to that property there. So those are some of the questions that we had, and like I said, if somebody can follow up with us or maybe even answer them here. I don't know, if time permits, but yeah, that's where our concerns.
Okay, I understand, and thank you for your participation tonight, and we'll see as other speakers speak and we wrap up tonight's session, we'll see the best way to get communication back to you. How's that?
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you.
Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard? I don't see any other digital hands, and I don't hear anyone else. Mr. Ortiz y Pino, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Let me ask you this. I don't know the geography well enough, although I was out at the property, to know why it would be that these folks at 3000 Cottonwood Lane would not have had notice of this. I don't know if they're outside possibly the required notice area. Do you happen to know that off the top of your head?
Yeah, I have the notification area in the map that was used by Client Development Service to send notifications. They are outside of the 400-foot radius notification area, so that's why they wouldn't have received one.
It seems like they're interested parties, though. Are you prepared tonight to? Let me just set the stage. Mr. Dolan, in his submittals, his written submittals, and I assume you've seen those. Is that correct?
That is correct.
While I will not prejudge any of what he had to say or anything that you have to say either, I mean, I take this as I find it. I hear testimony, I find facts. But setting aside for this discussion right now, issues related to whether the mayor and council had sufficient information, those types of procedural issues, which are not within my purview, focusing simply on the erosion threat issues. I'm not going to ask a question. I'm going to do it differently. Here's what I need. I'm going to continue the hearing for 30 days, or at such time as Mr. Beal will tell me I'm allowed to continue it. I think it's 30 days. In that time, I am going to ask, although I cannot require, I'm going to ask the applicant to reach out to the Cañezes. I hope I did it better that time. And to meet with them and answer the questions that they've raised. They are, whether they're within the required notice area or not, they are neighbors who have lived there for quite a period of time and will be living there for quite a period of time after. And I would like to give the applicant the opportunity to talk with them and answer their questions. Nothing comes from that except I would like you to do that. The second piece of it is I would like a specific, I would like some specific information responding to the statements that Mr. Dolan has made in his writings and in his testimony tonight, not relating, let me try to make it as clear as possible, relating solely to the potential flooding impact of this proposed site from the Santa Cruz River. Not did the mayor and council have enough information before them, not did somebody have enough time to do a good job or not a good job. I'm not going to revisit any of that, but I would like a very succinct presentation or answer to the question, is there anything in, and I don't say this way to cast any doubt on what Mr. Dolan had to say, but what is there to his concern that there's a flooding hazard, that this is an area of the Santa Cruz River that by design, Pima County has not bank protected. Perhaps the grouted riprap is sufficient protection. I don't know, but he's raised some issues that I do not see that they've been specifically addressed, and I want to have them addressed. So,
Mr. Urino, this is John Beal. I have a date that we could actually call out
Great.
tonight. That way it doesn't have
let's
to.
do it.
We have actually a hearing scheduled on November 17th, and that's within the 30 days.
Okay,
And then also we do have, if you need them tonight, or we have them back to next time, is Lauren Makis from our PDSD engineering. He was on board as well too.
yes, and
So-
I appreciate that. And Mr. Makis, thank you for standing by. But I think the applicant should be addressing these questions. So what I'm going to do then is continue the hearing to November 17th. And again, Mr. Ortiz Pino, if you would have someone reach out to the Canyases, that would be great. And then if you have any questions about what I'm looking for by way of further information on the flooding issues, I'm happy to try to provide it. But if you know what I'm asking, then we can just be done now.
I believe we have Lauren Makis has raised his hand and he could speak to that process as well. We have John Oliver on the line as well, who could probably speak to the flooding potential there. I know that the flood ordinance variance went through an exhaustive process and professionals, engineers, hydrologists, scientists reviewed it and approved it. I will let Lauren Makis
Yeah,
say more.
I'm aware of all that and I appreciate it. And I'm aware a variance was granted and I appreciate that. And Mr. Oliver answered my questions about the stack committees thing just fine. But I want specific answers to the floodplain technical issues that Mr. Dolan is raising both in his testimony tonight and in his written submittals. So that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Urino. This is Lauren Makis. I will work with the applicants so we can address your questions in a
Appreciate
short
it.
presentation at the next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. So with that, thank you, Mr. Makis. I really appreciate that. That's exactly what I needed. So with that, we're going to adjourn and we'll continue this hearing to November 17 at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yep.